attendance. We're all here, so the second item on the agenda is apologies, and there's none. So let's move straight on to item number 3, which is the declarations of interest.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, there is an item on the agenda regarding an award of contract in relation to Cross the Keilor Comprehensive School. My advice to members is that you have a personal interest if you are a council-appointed governor of that school, and you also if you have a close personal associate who attends or works at the school, or are a governor not appointed by the LEA, you'll also have an interest. My understanding is that Councillor Richard Clark is a council-appointed governor at Cross the Keilor Comprehensive School, and Councillor Veronica Crick is a council-appointed governor at Cross the Keilor Comprehensive School, and Councillor Crick's husband is chair of governors at the school. That's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Leader. I'm not aware of any other interests.
Any interest to add there, members? No? Okay, we can move on to item number 4 then, which is the confirmation of the minutes from the 13th of March. If I take you through these, any issues you're welcome to raise. I've got page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6 and page 7, and the Welsh language version is page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11 and page 12. Can I confirm they're all a true and accurate record? No matters arising? Right, we can move on to item number 5 then, which is the update on actions. As you can see, there's no outstanding actions on the sheet. Everyone happy to proceed to item 6? 21st Century Schools Band Day Phase 2. If I can hand over to Fiona to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Leader. Members will have seen similar reports in relation to other school buildings. Cabinet approved construction phase 1 to the contractor in November 2017. This report seeks to award the same contractor phase 2. This is the next step to ensure the development continues within budget and within expected completion date. The new facility will deliver sustainable education that is fit for purpose and will help develop a skilled and well-educated population. I don't think I have anything else to add, really, that it is a standard report.
I can hand over to David Yole then to mention before we pass on to Rachel.
In terms of the accommodation issue, because there is some kind of lag or overlap between the opening of the new sixth form institution and the closure of the sixth form at the school. We looked at several different options to accommodate those who were caught in that split, as it were, and we believe that the best possible solution and outcome here is to leave untouched one of the buildings in order to house the sixth formers who are still being taught. We believe that is the best solution, as I've said, and I think the school also is more than happy with that solution. So that puts to bed that one, I hope. If I could make a couple of comments, this is the biggest, certainly the biggest spend in terms of our our 21st Century Schools programme, some £30 million, and we're very, very proud of it. What we have tried to do, and this is linked to that earlier point, is to run in parallel both the development of the new school build and indeed the development of the post-16. Certainly in the earlier days of developing plans and so on and so forth. And that's no small feat, because what we've had to do is to develop plans for an 11 to 16 in parallel with an 11 to 18 institution, because at that point we hadn't yet had the go-ahead, although we were confident, we hadn't had the go-ahead for the closure of the sixth forms in our remit. But now that's all behind us, and the development of the school is coming along very, very well. Myself, along with the rest of the education team, are very happy with the situation. We are happy with the way in which the school has cooperated with the developers, because They've had an input into the design and the plans, which is good. It's very apposite because they will be populating the new school. And we, the Education Service and myself, would probably share with the school the tremendous excitement of watching the school grow out of the ground over the next few months.
Okay, hand over to Rachel to take us through.
Thank you, Leader. I suppose just note the policy context has been completely set out. I think it's just important for Cabinet to note that what we're requesting today is the award of a contract for Phase 2. It is within the agreed budget parameters set by the entire programme. It is for the actual construction works, to say this, as Councillor Ewell says, to see the building come out of the grounds now and the grounds works are being undertaken. So really just to recommend it to Cabinet to approve so that we can continue with the works as planned.
Any questions or points other Cabinet members want to make? Okay, if I move you to the recommendation on page 17. Before mentioning that recommendation itself, I'm pleased to see the way that the Appendix 1 of the reports today includes the wellbeing assessment. I think that's an important step that we're taking to make sure that's built into all of these reports at the earliest possible stage. That's welcome. The recommendation then on page 17 is that Cabinet approves the award of the construction phase, Phase 2, for the replacement of Cross Achille Comprehensive School to the previously appointed main contractor in the sum of £21,628,621, which is within the agreed project funding parameters and contained within the current cost plan. Can I have a show of hands in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 7 then is the library strategy for the future of the Library and Information Service in Torvine. If I hand over to Alan Jones.
Met with the demands of Torvine residents. As you would have thought, in light of austerity, it is important that the service has a clear direction and purpose. The report sets out a sustainable strategy for the Library and Information Service for the next 5 years, which was widely consulted upon. Just under 1,500 responses from the community were received. Following approval, the strategy will be adopted and implemented over the coming years and monitored by the Council's performance management process and service plans. It is important for members to note that the strategy proposes to maintain three libraries, Cwmbran, Pontypool and Blaenavon, at the heart of their communities by continuing to provide the services of public value through events and activities, partnerships with user groups and links with schools. The proposed reconfiguration required to deliver the T22 budget, saving £200,000, will reduce the management levels, ensuring the frontline services are able to continue to provide access for all our communities. The report explains that there will be 5 posts affected. 2 posts are currently vacant and will therefore not be filled, leaving regrettably 3 compulsory redundancies. The new model will also require the introduction of self-service technology for book loaning purposes. The cost of up to £50,000 will be required to find the technology, which will be funded from the service-specific reserves. The strategy also suggests that libraries going forward should be a first port of call for a wider range of customer-facing council services linked to our corporate aims and objectives. When looking at the range of services and the responses of the consultation, it is likely that the future of our libraries will increasingly become places that ensure our residents obtain the service they need for continued social interaction and for health and social well-being. A greater demand for social care becomes crucial.
Okay, I can bring in Rachel Jones at this point.
I think, from what I understand, that this has been a long-standing review of the libraries to get us to where we are today. So we are pleased to bring it. And I think over the last few months, the strategy has changed its focus given where it was back in 2016 and 17, where we were looking at a much bigger pool of staff redundancies. And in fact, we've just switched the model on its head to ensure that our core staff are are secured and the service provision is clearly articulated by Cabinet and then endorsed by scrutiny to keep the 3 libraries open. And that is what we will be doing. There is the introduction of the technology which is currently in Blaenavon into Pontypool and Cwmbran, which is where some of the operational savings come in. But it's important, I think, and what the documentation outlines is that we are seeing the libraries to switch from a library and information service to an information first and library service, whereby you start mapping out all the activity that goes on within those buildings is far greater than the provision of books, and which actually supports particularly our educational our outcome for corporate priorities, and also supporting the vulnerable. And that's sort of like the steer that the service wants to go forward to help drive that. So we need to keep that frontline resource within the libraries. Following decision by Cabinet, then there will be a report to come forward on a restructure. Staff have been engaged and consulted throughout this process, as have the unions. So it's important to bear that in mind, and all the due process in line with the council procedures to sort of support the staff through this difficult time, because restructures are difficult, but we will do it empathetically and fairly over the next few months. So commend the strategy to members. It reaffirms the model. It is a continuation of a service whilst also achieving a financial saving.
Thank you. Alan?
I think the key to this is that we're keeping 3 libraries open for the community, which is a must.
Anyone else want to come in at this point? Mandy?
I just want to agree with Alan. I know this has been a long-standing issue, and I know scrutiny has looked at it many times. I was chair when we looked at it 2 years ago, and I think the importance is that it's being kept open. Self-service model in Blaenavon is working really well, and I think taking it forward would be really good for the other 2 libraries.
Yeah, these things are always difficult, when you need to save money. And as you say, any restructures always causes sort of concerns and tensions. But I hope this approach shows how much we value libraries as part of the services we provide. Alan and Mandy have mentioned the retention of 3 libraries. I don't think that's something we should take for granted. If you look across the UK at the number of libraries that are closing, of course we've had libraries in the past close in Torvine. We've really tried to make a commitment to keep those 3 libraries open in the 3 sort of cores of population in Torvine, rather than risk losing one of those libraries. I think this is the right approach. And I think it's the right approach as well to try and bring services into libraries. You've seen customer care in Cwmbran. I think the Blaenavon approach of co-location and using technology is a good one to really put libraries at the heart of our service going forwards. These aren't just places anymore, if they ever were, where people borrow books. These are places where people can access a great number of services, including, of course, books. And very much put libraries at the heart of what we do. I think it's right that the review has been a long-standing thing. That may have been a source of frustration in some quarters, but I think it's right that we looked at this and re-looked at it, and we changed the focus, both to safeguard the service, and I think within this look at it, we've managed to minimise the employment implications of it too, which I think is important too. And I want to just close on that point, really, to pay tribute to the staff in libraries. Whenever you sort of review something like this, perhaps people feel that we're reviewing it because they're not valued. That couldn't be further from the truth. I think we really value the service they provide and the job they do. We're just trying to make sure that we can move into the future, which, like it or not, and I certainly don't, it's going to involve less money whilst keeping the libraries open. So I just wanted to end by saying how much we value the service that our library staff provide. Any contributions, Dave?
Yeah, it's only a really small aspect of this, but I just a thought that occurred to me with regards to the DVD provision. Is there any way of sort of retaining it via some sort of voluntary donation model where people can just donate their old DVDs in and then just allocate them like that? Is that a possibility, or would that still incur cost?
It would still incur cost in terms of the tagging, and actually people just weren't using the service.
No. Okay.
Because there was so much streaming and the feedback came from the public. We don't need this anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
Right, if people are happy then to move to the recommendations on page 36. to approve the final Library Information Services Strategy 2018, the commencement of a staff consultation on the proposed new structure for the Library and Information Service, which will deliver the T22 budget saving of £200,000, and to the delegation to the Chief Officer of Neighbourhoods Planning and Public Protection to make minor alterations to the terrestrial structure following consultation. Are members happy to agree to that? Hands? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you. With that then, we move on to agenda item 8, which is the introduction of a high volume protocol. If I hand over initially to Veronica on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet colleagues, you will recall that when a new telephone answering service was introduced several years ago, it was fraught with problems and attracted many user complaints. Since then, the call service has significantly improved, and over the last 12 months, in excess of 85% of inbound calls have been answered, with consequently 15% being abandoned. As a Cabinet, we have wished to see further improvement in the experience of residents and businesses needing to contact the Council, and mandated the Head of Strategic Services to seek to improve the service with a target of a 10% abandoned call rate. The high volume call rate protocol, which I would now commend to you, is the outcome of this project, which will meet the new target within, and I think this is very important, existing levels of resourcing. In other words, no further financing should be required. Briefly, during periods of higher than usual peak demand, additional call agents will be made available by dealing with these extra calls through all the supported services, and particularly by those linked to the demand escalation. The functions and services impacted by the adoption of the HVP are notably Call Torvine, Council Tax, Revenues and Benefits, Debtors, Elections, Homes or Home Secret Services, Neighbourhood Services and the Social Care and Housing Service. The recommendations are twofold: one, that Cabinet adopts the protocol, and secondly, it agrees to keep its impact under review at quarterly corporate performance assessment sessions. Thank you.
Leader, nothing I can add. Perfectly done. Brilliant.
I think that's a good summary, really, that, you know, what Veronica said, that we wanted further improvements to the experience of people who call the Council. This protocol is about how we achieve that, basically. So if I can then move in, unless there's any other comments, to the recommendations on page 109, that we, as Veronica says, adopt the high volume protocol and agree to keep its impact under review at quarterly performance assessment sessions. Are we all happy to be in favour of that? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 9 then is the further resettlement of refugees and vulnerable children. If I hand over to Dave Daniels initially on this one. Thank you, Leader.
So this is a proposed extension of the Syrian resettlement programme, which we've participated in since 2015. During that time, we've successfully supported the resettlement of 6 vulnerable families in Torvine who've escaped devastating wars and civil catastrophes in Syria, the Middle East and Africa, as you have seen on various news reports, where the persecution and displacement of these citizens has been on, quite frankly, a biblical scale, and well reported across the world. 3.3 of the report explains that the UK government's resettlement programme identify the most vulnerable individuals at greatest risk of further persecution and exploitation. And this includes women and girls at risk, survivors of torture, cases involving medical and disability issues, sexual orientation and gender identity, and refugees who have links to the UK. So our existing families we've resettled in well. All the children are in school and thriving. They speak 3 languages, so they speak obviously the dialect of Arabic, but they also speak Welsh and English. They've got friends in schools now, so many of these children won't have gone to school where they came from. So they're absolutely flourishing at school. They've got friends who come round for tea at night, and they participate in everything and anything. English lessons are being delivered at home to the families, sometimes by neighbours, sometimes by friends from school, parents from friends at school. Some from churches. Local churches have been fantastic at getting on board with this and have really helped support us in this, as you'd expect them to, and have really helped put some of the adults in touch, because an issue could be isolation, but they've been fantastic at stepping up with that. Again, various different other partners have been amazing in doing their bit. Torvine Play in particular have been fantastic at taking the families out for day trips out to local landmarks and involving the children in the local play schemes. There have been no issues of community tension. In fact, the community's neighbours have welcomed in the family. So all in all, it's been a successful programme, and I think we've been recognised for that by Welsh Government and elsewhere. In fact, our coordinator, Chris Hunt, is the regional coordinator now for the area, if I've got that right, because he's done such a great job, and so the team behind him. So it's a very, very valuable programme that I think has made a massive difference for those families that have come here. When we see the pictures of what they've escaped, this is a world away from that. So this is asking us to take an additional 4 families over the next 2 years, and the programme is fully funded by the Home Office, so there'll be no cost at all to Torvine. It's the right thing to do, so I commend this to you today, and I'll open it up to any questions, and Lyndon, hopefully you can pick up anything I've missed out or any questions I can't answer.
Lyndon?
Councillor Downs has covered every point, Leader. I really can't add anything to it other than really reinforce the positiveness that these families have had both ways, both for themselves personally and within the community. They've been very much welcomed. Councillor Daniels mentions Chris Edward has done a fantastic job of coordinating, not just in Torvine, but in Blaenau Gwent and Caerphilly, to ensure that we have the right services in place for families. So it is going particularly well. Councillor Daniels mentioned the fact that we're now doing one-to-one tuition in people's homes, which is bringing on their language skills much better. We're considering now how we could perhaps adopt that with children as well across a regional approach.
Of course, what David probably wouldn't do would commend the part that he's played in this, and the lead he's taken, and you as well, Lynn, and the work you've done, which we really appreciate on this. Any comments from members? If not, I'll bring you to the recommendations, which are on page. You on this? My computer's frozen. 117118, is it? That Cabinet agrees to 1, support a further 4 families with the SRP, and 2, that the head of PSSU commences with the resettlement process with the Home Office. Everyone in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Right. The next item then is the draft Violence Against Women, Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence Strategy. If I hand over to David again.
Thank you, members, for that vote just then, and thank you, Leader, for passing this over to me. I'd just like to start by thanking Lyndon explicitly on this, because he has absolutely championed this agenda, and he's put a hell of a lot of work, and so have those behind him. It's an important agenda, and it's important that we get it right, so I just want to put that on record, that my thanks to him for that. So following the introduction, this follows the introduction of the Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Act in 2015, which states that the Council must have a joint strategy with its local health board. So due to the existing partnership we've got working across Gwent, as a Gwent region, we have developed using an evidence and needs assessment involving the key stakeholders and holders and the Voice of Victims Wales first regional strategy. The regional strategy has been presented to each of the local 5 authorities in Gwent and the Health Board, and here in Torvine. A members' seminar with 28 members was in attendance, and I think that went quite well. Members were generally very supportive of the aims of the strategy, and recognised the priorities that we've got are very much evidence-based. So the strategy is gender neutral, and in that it recognises that this issue affects everyone in society, but there is a disproportionate impact on women, and the specific reference in the legislation to women is in regard to FGM, forced marriage and so-called honour-based violence. Outside of these areas, the legislation is gender neutral. So the strategy has been independently evaluated through Cordis Bright, and the 6 key priorities contained within the strategy mirrors the Wales national strategy, making this strategy connected both locally, regional and nationally. This strategy will coordinate and benefit positively to Gwent's approach by tackling these serious issues through the development of strategic delivery plan. Each council is being asked to approve the regional strategy, which will run from 2018 to 2023 and will be subject to annual review, with a strategic delivery plan offered annually to scrutiny to advise on progress. The strategy will also be overseen by the Public Service Board, to whom the VAUDA board reports. So I'll now pass over to Lyndon to fill any gaps in that I've left and answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn has absolutely covered every point. Thank you, Leader. Nothing more to add.
Any questions or comments before we go to the recommendation on this report? Page 128 then is the recommendation that Cabinet adopts the regional strategy as included as Appendix A. You all happy to adopt that? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lyndon. Right, we move then to item 11, which is the Integrated Commissioning of Section 33 Agreement for Care Homes for Older People in Gwent. Richard.
Thank you, Leader. The Social Services and Wellbeing Act requires collaboration between health and social care, and the Section 33 agreements is one way of doing this, or pooling of budgets as it's commonly known, and this should bring a seamless delivery of services to citizens. In this instance, it's been agreed to trial it with care homes, and this is throughout Wales. I think we're pretty fair to say that we're pretty advanced as a region in the Aneurin Bevan Health Board footprint area, and has been recognised by the Minister for that. Members will be familiar with the content following a recent policy development forum, and the report, or versions of this report, are also going to the other councils and indeed the Aneurin Bevan University Health Board. Joint commissioning and the Section 33 agreement will allow councils and health boards to work in collaboration. It should allow better provision for our citizens, and it should allow certainty for providers, which is important in these troubled times. This will not cross-subsidise the local authorities. The money will be spent in Torfaen. We have previous experience of pooled budgets, particularly within frailty, and as I said, this is a direction of travel as indicated by the Act, and the lessons from the pooled frailty budget and this budget will shape service delivery on the future. Just as an aside, Keith and I sit on the Regional Partnership Board. For my sins, I'm the Vice Chairman of the Regional Partnership. That teaches me to miss a meeting. But we will report back to members any developments, and Eunice has kindly joined us for any technical questions you might have, and she might want to add anything to what I've said, or might want to clarify anything I've said. Eunice?
No, it's. I think Councillor Clark's covered it all. Just to reiterate that the pooled fund, as it stands at the moment, will be non-risk sharing. So effectively, it's what you've pointed out. So we would still have full control over our budgets, and it's the first step in achieving the requirement of the Act. Really.
Keith, do you want to come in?
I think I covered it in the PDF fairly fully, actually, so unless you've got any other questions, it was pretty much as I took you through it then. But
Okay, any questions, members? It's good to see us taking forward another collaboration with neighbouring authorities and the Aneurin Bevan University Health Board, really, to put sort of service delivery at the heart of what we do, and to work with our partners in public services across Gwent. I think it's another way in which sort of Torfaen takes the lead on these things in many respects. If I can move you then to page 181 and the recommendations, that Cabinet firstly agrees that the local authority will enter into a Section 33 arrangement with the other Gwent local authorities and the Aneurin Bevan University Health Board to establish a regional pooled budget in relation to the exercise of care accommodation functions, in this instance homes for older people. Secondly, that we approve that the Cabinet Member for Health, Adult Services and Wellbeing can be given delegated powers as Torbine County Borough Council's member of the RPB in the exercise of those functions, and consideration of any specific arrangements that need to be put in place to meet statutory duties at local and regional level. And thirdly, note the resource implications for local authority in relation to the pooled budget arrangements and oversight of the pooled budget agreements by the RPB. We can have a show of hands in favour. That's carried then. Thank you, everyone. That moves us then to the final item, which is agenda item 12, which is the disposal of TKID 3, the building and car park. Welcome, Victor, and hand over to Veronica.
Thank you, Leader. Cabinet members, in 2011, you'll recall that SRS took occupation of 3 buildings adjacent to Gilchrist Thomas Industrial Estate in Glenavon. Known as TKID, the 3rd building was vacated in April 2016. Several firms have shown an interest since then, but not proceeded much beyond the inquiry stage. Consequently, the council has had to pay business rates for the vacant premises. However, earlier this year, a company which has purchased and occupies 6 of the Gilchrist Thomas Estate buildings approached the council with a view to acquiring TKID to support its business expansion. As the property had not been marketed, a valuation by an independent chartered surveyor was commissioned to ascertain the market value, the cost of this being shared by both parties. The prospective purchaser has made an offer of £400,000, which was the advised value, subject to a building survey still to be undertaken. Half the car park between TKID 2 and 3 will be included in the proposed disposal. There's 3 recommendations, which I'm sure Victor will lead you through, and I would certainly commend it to you. It's a very sensible way of dealing with what could become an awkward problem. You know, speaking to the councillor for Glenavon, it's clearly an area where there are possibilities of vandalism, of other things happening in the area which could cause difficulties. It's also going to be a way of providing a further 12 jobs for the area, which is good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Hand over to Victor.
Thank you, Leader. The only other point I would add really is to reassure Cabinet that although we haven't marketed the property as such, we should be the conventional way of demonstrating that we're getting best value, because we've had an independent evaluation of the property, and the offer that's come in is equivalent to the valuation. Cabinet can be reassured that we'll be selling the property at best value.
Any questions, Cabinet members?
I think it's a real positive move for that building to be sold, because honestly, we've had lots of vandalism in Glenavon in recent months, and I think it's a real positive move to get rid of it, to be honest with you. Thanks.
Indeed, to provide jobs, to help a local company, and to reduce that issue. It also sort of shows us acting on the inquiries from members about how we can help local firms where possible, and where they're looking for a premises, and this both achieves value for us and helps a local business. So it seems like a win-win from my point of view. Any other questions before we move to the recommendations? Okay, the recommendations then are on page 195, I think that is. That the property known as TKID 3 building and car park be declared surplus to council requirements with immediate effect, and that Cabinet accepts the offer of £400,000 made by the company referred to. Secondly, that Cabinet authorises the Assistant Chief Executive Resources to undertake the necessary steps required in the disposal of TKID 3 to the interested company, identifying suitable funding for the car park demarcation works. And thirdly, that Cabinet grant delegated authority to the Exec Member for Performance Improvement and Corporate Governance, and Veronica, who's just spoken, as Cabinet Member with responsibility for asset management, to determine any other matters pertaining to the proposed disposal that may require further executive approval, especially if there is a change in price following the building survey. So Cabinet members happy to approve that? That's carried then. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Veronica. That concludes Cabinet this morning. So thank you all members and officers for attending.
Yeah.